Hello, and welcome to Nighttime Fables, a haven where stories come to life under the gentle hush of evening, guiding you toward a peaceful night's rest. Tonight, we bring you another calming tale, one crafted to ease your mind and invite a sense of tranquil calm. But first, let's take a few moments to prepare both body and mind for a restful sleep. Make yourself comfortable, and with each slow inhale and gentle exhale, feel the day's worries slowly melt away. It can be challenging to separate from the bustle of the day, especially as bedtime nears. Yet remember, the less we fret about falling asleep, the more our minds can let go of lingering tension. Let the gentle flow of your breathing soothe any concerns and allow tonight's story to guide you into a deep, restorative slumber. Now get cozy and let the soft glow of nighttime fables envelope you. Enjoy this story, and may it lead you into a serene and restful sleep. The cottage door yielded to Ilara's shoulder, groaning shut against the tumultuous March wind. Rain boots stamped mud onto the welcome mat. A dripping umbrella found its precarious balance by the coat stand as she shrugged off her sodden trench coat. A sigh escaped her lips, a soft counterpoint to the gale outside, as she brushed wind-whipped strands of hair from her face, carrying a small sack of provisions toward the compact kitchen counter. In like a lion, out like a lamb, the old adage echoed in her mind. Nature, it seemed, was embracing the leonine entrance with gusto. An evening perfectly sculpted for battening down hatches, for retreating into warmth. No further skirmishes with the elements were planned for this night. Elara flicked the switch on her countertop toaster oven, its interior beginning to glow, then traversed the charming dimensions of her sitting room to the bedroom beyond. There, damp clothes gladly surrendered to the embrace of favorite flannel pajamas. Perched on the bed's edge, she tugged on the fuzziest pair of warm socks, stretching her liberated feet before her with a contented sigh. The release from day-long confinement was pure bliss. For a moment, she sat bathed in the amber glow of her bedside lamp, surveying the sanctuary around her. Serendipity had led her, a few years prior, to this small carriage house nestled beside a historic manor, the perfect haven for her sabbatical spent chronicling Maine's lighthouses. It was small, tidy, utterly enchanting. Her landlady resided nearby in the grand neighboring house, making the arrangement ideal. The autonomy of a detached dwelling without the burdens of extensive upkeep. Her bedroom possessed a storybook sweetness. The carriage house, long since reimagined as living quarters, boasted appealing hardwood floors, a functional kitchenette, and, anchoring the living space, a welcoming fireplace. Often, Elara found herself lost in contemplation, gazing from the kitchen window across the estate gardens, feeling momentarily like a character stepped from folklore. Mustering the will, she padded silently across the floorboards, returning to the kitchen's nascent warmth. From the grocery sack emerged a container of take-out macaroni and cheese. Lid discarded, it slid into the preheated oven, set for a slow bake, the kind that promised a burnished, bubbling crown of cheese. True comfort food demanded patience. The fireplace, retrofitted with a gas insert, sprang to life with the turn of a knob, casting lambent flames across the room. Elara retrieved several notebooks and a pen from her satchel near the door. Work beckoned this evening. International Women's Day loomed. Clara, a historian friend teaching high school, had posed a question. Would Elara speak to her class? Knowing Elara's immersion in lighthouse lore, Clara wondered about female keepers. A marvelous inquiry, Elara had thought, agreeing instantly. It felt a brilliant chance, after a year steeped in maritime history, to illuminate the often overlooked contributions of women who tended the lights. The challenge lay only in selection. The candidates were numerous. Settling into her favorite plush armchair, feet propped on the upholstered ottoman, she opened a notebook, her eyes scanning the pages, perusing her notes. Katerina Schmidt, née Vogel, immediately came to mind. The tireless guardian of Robin's Reef Light in New York Harbor. To grasp Katerina's resolve, one had to begin at her origins. Unlike many who inherited the keeper's mantle, Katerina wasn't born to a lighthouse family, nor even on American soil. In 1882, aged 37, she departed Germany for the United States, her young son, Jakob, in tow. She found employment as a cook in a New Jersey boarding house, where destiny introduced her to Johann Schmidt, the keeper of Sandy Hook Light. Johann began teaching her English. Affection blossomed. They married, and Katerina moved to the Sandy Hook Lighthouse, thus embarking on the intricate business of light keeping around the age of 40. Later in 1885, Captain Schmidt received orders transferring him to Robin's Reef Light, roughly a mile north of Staten Island. Compared to Sandy Hook, Robin's Reef Station presented stark isolation. Offshore, erected upon a submerged ledge, the new post initially cast a pall over Katerina. When I first came to Robin's Reef, she confided later in life, the sight of the water whichever way I looked made me lonesome. I refused to unpack my trunks at first, but gradually, a little at a time, I unpacked. After a while, they were all unpacked, and I stayed on. Soon after, she gave birth to a daughter, Maria, and the family of 4 braced for the long vigil. Elara paused, contemplating Katerina's words. The woman's resolute fortitude struck her profoundly. Widow, mother, immigrant, she had embraced available work, discerned a practical occupation, and accepted even the profound solitude of this remote station. Her determination was formidable, yet her persistence faced further trials. In 1890, Johann Schmidt succumbed to illness. His final words to his wife were reportedly, "Mind the light, Kate." A small smile touched Elara's lips. Katerina seemed the sort who scarcely needed reminding. Naturally, she assumed his full responsibilities while raising her 2 children. Despite her proven experience, her superiors doubted a woman's capacity for the role. While she minded the light with unflappable skill, they persisted in seeking a male replacement. Yet, after several years, by 1895, they conceded. Katerina Schmidt was officially appointed keeper of Robin's Reef Light. Elara knew from deep research that tending the lamp itself was merely the preamble to a keeper's duties. Katerina was once quoted declaring the light more difficult to care for than a family of children. Daily, the lamp demanded attention, cleaning reflectors, scraping ice in winter's grip. Foul weather necessitated activating the fog siren. If it malfunctioned, she resorted to manually striking the fog bell until repairs were made. Concurrently, she remained a mother, the custodian of her island home. A 1906 New York Times article quoted her claim of having as much housework as the Waldorf Astoria. A bastion of New York grandeur, Ilara knew. Cooking, bedmaking, cleaning, solitary daily chores, even procuring supplies or ferrying her children to school on Staten Island required rowing a mile alone. Elara struggled to fathom the hardship inherent in such everyday tasks for an isolated keeper. And, of course, Katerina was a rescuer, estimating she saved at least 50 souls from drowning over her 33-year tenure. Miss Schmidt retired in 1919, having witnessed Robbins Reef light transition from kerosene to oil vapor lamps to electricity. Towards the end, the 5-room light station housed her, her son Jacob, now assistant keeper, his wife, and her 5 grandchildren. Katerina spent her twilight years in a modest Staten Island cottage, tending a garden, her gaze often drifting towards Robbins Reef light. Upon her passing, the New York Post eulogized, "In the sight of the city of towers and the torch of liberty, lived this sturdy little woman, proud of her work and content in it, keeping her lamp alight and her windows cleaned so that New York Harbor might be safe for ships that pass in the night." Yes, Elara affirmed silently, Katerina Schmidt was essential for the presentation. Setting down her papers, she rose from the armchair's embrace and returned to the toaster oven. Opening the small door, released a wave of warmth. The contents bubbled gently beneath a delicious toasted crust. The tantalizing aroma of cheddar drifted across the counter. Dinner was served. She slid the macaroni and cheese onto a white plate, retrieved a fork, and carefully navigated back to her fireside perch. Nestling into the cushions, she placed the plate on the small table beside her. Steam curled enticingly from the dish. A moment's cooling was required. Turning back to her notebook, she flipped through pages, searching for her next lighthouse heroine. Her finger paused at Flora May Sellers. Unlike Katerina, Flora had known several posts before ascending to headkeeper. Before arriving at Maryland's Turkey Point Light in 1922 with her husband, she had served alongside him as assistant keeper at no fewer than 4 lighthouses in neighboring Virginia. She remained assistant keeper when the Turkey Point tenure began, but her husband passed away in 1925, leaving her a widow at 43. As it transpired, she wasn't significantly younger than Katerina when she sought the headkeeper position. She immediately assumed the duties without official appointment. Yet despite her 20 years of experience, confirmation proved elusive. In contrast to Katerina's struggle against gender bias, Flora faced a different obstacle. Indeed, 3 previous Turkey Point keepers had been women. Instead, the civil service contested her age, deeming her too old for the demands of the job. Fortunately, Flora was not easily dissuaded. She appealed the decision, ultimately securing the appointment directly from President Calvin Coolidge, becoming the sole female keeper ever to receive a presidential appointment. Her salary was set at $1,140 per year, roughly equivalent to $18,000 today. Much like Katerina, Flora simultaneously managed a family while tending the light. She had 3 children, Myrtle, Jessie Olivia, and Clarence. Ilara had encountered an old black and white photograph capturing Flora and young Clarence tending turkeys near the lighthouse. A necessity, given the family's responsibility for their own provisioning. Reaching the nearest town involved either a lengthy 14-mile drive or an 8-mile boat journey across the Chesapeake. Furthermore, unloading supplies from a boat meant negotiating a 137-step stairway down to a floating dock, then hoisting heavy goods upwards using a windlass and winch. Unsurprisingly, the family cultivated a garden and raised livestock to sustain themselves on the property. Flora diligently performed all the day-to-day responsibilities of any keeper. Before the light's electrification in 1943, this included replenishing oil in the lamps and trimming wicks. On one occasion, the fog bell mechanism failed. She was forced to ascend to the 200-pound bell and manually strike it with its 50-pound clapper 4 times a minute for nearly an hour. During this exertion, she missed a call from her son-in-law announcing her granddaughter's birth. Ilara smiled, picturing Flora as such a remarkably fit grandmother. Nonetheless, Flora confessed, "I was never more exhausted in my whole life." A sentiment Ilara readily believed. Flora faithfully maintained this demanding post for 22 years, retiring at 65 in 1947. Reflecting on her role, she famously quipped, "Oh, it was an easy light chore, but my feet got tired, and climbing the tower has given me fallen arches." Upon her departure, Flora May Sellers was the last serving civilian female light keeper in the United States. Thanks to her and the 3 capable women preceding her, Washingtonian magazine once dubbed Turkey Point Light the feminist lighthouse of the Chesapeake. Like Katerina, Flora never relinquished her affection for her beloved station, retiring just 6 miles away, where its steadfast beam remained visible in the nocturnal darkness. Ilara paused, jotting notes. Then, with anticipation, she set the pages aside and reached for her dinner. As she savored the creamy, cheesy pasta, her gaze drifted absently toward the dancing flames in the hearth. The evening was mellowing into that tranquil hour when relaxation deepens and the mind begins to roam. The fire evoked thoughts of the unrelenting duty of tending wicks and flames in pre-electric beacons. Male or female, all keepers shouldered onerous burdens. She doubted her own capacity for such a life. Luxuriating in the final bites of her delicious meal, Ilara rose once more, carrying her plate to the sink. A distinct chill permeated the kitchen air now, proximity to the window and door making the temperature drop noticeable. She retrieved a sweater from a nearby chair back, slipping it on, then lifting her cheerful red kettle from the stove. She filled it and set it to boil. Task complete, she returned to her study nook and retrieved her notebook. A few more page turns revealed the perfect subsequent candidate for her presentation. It felt imperative to include the woman arguably the most famous lightkeeper in American history, Isadora Zephyrine Lowell, known universally as Izzy, the second of Captain Horatio Lowell's 4 children. Horatio became only the second keeper at Lime Rock Light in Newport, Rhode Island, commencing his duties in 1857. Completed just 3 years prior, Lime Rock wasn't excessively isolated, perched on a ledge a mere 220 yards from shore. Still, it was an island. Every necessity required retrieval from the mainland via rowboat. Young Izzy swiftly attained exceptional proficiency with that rowboat, a skill that proved vital. Within 4 months of the family settling at the light station, Izzy's father, Horatio, suffered a disabling stroke, rendering him unable to work. 15-year-old Izzy stepped forward, assisting her mother with all keeper duties while also caring for her father and chronically ill younger sister. Added to this, she rode her siblings to school in Newport each weekday. Renowned as one of the town's finest swimmers, Izzy was hailed a hero from age 12. Even before the move to the lighthouse, she had rescued 4 men whose boat capsized, using her own rowboat. Then, at 27, Izzy dashed into icy waters, shoeless, joining her brother to save 2 soldiers whose vessel overturned during a snowstorm. This act garnered significant acclaim. One soldier gifted her a gold watch. His comrades at Fort Adams collected $218 in gratitude. Ultimately, she became the only woman awarded the government's prestigious Gold Life-Saving Medal, bestowed in 1881 for rescuing 2 more Fort Adams soldiers who had fallen through the ice while traversing Newport Harbor. In 1877, Izzy's mother grew ill, passing away the following year. Izzy was appointed head light keeper in 1879, earning $750 annually, making her the nation's highest paid keeper at that time. Elara's thoughts were interrupted by the kettle's insistent summons. She padded to the counter, silenced the burner, lifted the kettle, and poured steaming water carefully over a peppermint tea bag nestled in a mug. Above the counter, the window pane rattled briefly, buffeted by the wind. Elara hugged her sweater tighter, carrying the hot beverage back to her fireside chair. Blowing gently across the surface, she set it down to steep, then returned her attention to her notes. Izzy never maintained a formal log of her rescues, but the press eagerly disseminated the tales far and wide. It's estimated she saved 18 lives during her 54 years on the island. News of her exploits spread through prominent publications like Harper's Weekly and the New York Tribune. Izzy transformed into a celebrated icon, meeting admirals, presidents, and luminaries such as the feminist Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Her final recorded rescue occurred at age 63, when a visiting friend inadvertently capsized her own rowboat. By 64, Izzy was a beneficiary of the Carnegie Hero Fund, receiving a monthly stipend of $30. The great lady of Lime Rock Light passed away in 1911, aged 69. Bells tolled, flags flew at half-mast, and 1 in 400 mourners attended her funeral. She would undoubtedly have felt immense pride seeing the station officially renamed Ida Lewis Rocklight, an unprecedented honor for a U.S. light keeper. Songs have even been composed in her memory. Elara set her notebook down, picked up her tea, blowing lightly again. Her gaze returned to the kitchen window. Darkness had fully descended. She could hear the cold rain drumming against the glass. An occasional gust drove fatter drops against the pane with a louder spatter. She imagined the countless dark nights endured by keepers alone, executing their duties amidst the worst weather. Relishing her warm sanctuary by the fire, Ilara knew, with sudden clarity, who her fourth and final lighthouse heroine must be. Returning to her primary focus, Maine, she opened her notebook to the pages detailing the teenage lighthouse hero, Abigail Burnham. Abigail moved with her family to the profoundly isolated lighthouse on Matinicus Rock in 1853. She was the fourth of 9 children born to lightkeeper Silas Burnham and his wife, Prudence. Sources described the rock as one of the most remote outposts on the eastern seaboard, a barren isle. The nearest supply point was Rockland, a 23-mile boat journey away. Abigail's brother Benjamin showed little interest in light keeping, preferring work on fishing vessels. Meanwhile, seeking to supplement their income, her father Silas also spent time catching fish and lobster to sell in Rockland. Consequently, Abigail assumed many of her father's duties at the young age of 15. This she did while caring for her 3 younger sisters and her chronically ill mother. Abigail's role as assistant keeper was complicated by the lard lamps she managed. The New England Historical Society quoted her, "Sometimes they would not burn so well when first lighted, especially in cold weather when the oil got cold. Then some nights I could not sleep a wink all night, and many nights I have watched the light my part of the night, thinking nervously what might happen should the light fail." Nevertheless, she persisted faithfully, adding, "In all these years, I always put the lamps in order, and I lit them at sunset." Despite the heavy burden borne in her youthful years, Abigail found time to read past keepers' logs, which chronicled devastating storms. Learning of one that had entirely destroyed the previous lighthouse, she grew concerned about the current keeper's house's structural integrity. She relocated her mother's bedroom to what she deemed the sturdiest section of the dwelling. This proved a prescient decision, saving Prudence shortly thereafter. In January 1856, Silas grew anxious. The biannual supply ship had failed to reach them in autumn due to inclement weather. Worried about winter provisions, both food and lighthouse fuel, he instructed Abigail to mind the light while he journeyed to Rockland. With Benjamin away fishing, Abigail was left with her sisters, her mother, and the critical responsibility of keeping the beacon lit. Soon after Silas's departure, a ferocious tempest struck. For 3 days, it lashed the island, damaging the part of the keeper's house where Prudence had previously slept. The storm raged unabated for 3 days, eventually flooding the island knee-deep in icy water. Abigail was forced to move her family to the 2nd floor of the North Lighthouse Tower for safety. Over her mother's protests during a lull, she waded out to the chicken coop. Remarkably, she rescued all but one of her chickens, ushering the rest to safety within the lighthouse. Before the storm finally subsided, a monstrous wave completely obliterated the keeper's house. It became one of New England's infamous tempests. Silas couldn't return for 4 weeks. Throughout this entire period, Abigail kept the lights burning, undoubtedly saving countless mariners from disaster on Matanicus Rock. Thanks to her foresight with the chickens, she sustained her family on a daily ration of 1 cup of cornmeal and 1 egg each. According to the Historical Society, 17-year-old Abigail reflected on the ordeal. Some reason, I know not why, I had no misgivings and went on with my work as usual. For 4 weeks, owing to rough weather, no landing could be effected on the rock. During this time, we were without the assistance of any male member of our family. Though at times greatly exhausted by my labors, but once did the lights fail. Under God, I was able to perform all my accustomed duties as well as my father's. Elara paused, taking another sip of tea before turning the page. Unlike Isilol's celebrated deeds, Abigail's heroism remained largely unheralded at the time. In 1861, her father was replaced as keeper by President Lincoln due to political affiliations. Light keepers were political appointees. Abigail, however, had formed a deep attachment to the windswept island and requested permission to stay and train the new keeper, Captain Jonah Grant. As fate would have it, she fell in love with Grant's son Isaiah. They married and served together as assistant keepers on the rock. Abigail and Isaiah remained on Matanicus Rock for 14 years, raising 4 children there. In 1875, after 22 years in residence, Abigail finally left the island. She and Isaiah were appointed keepers at Whitehead Light, where they served another 15 years before retiring. In one of her last letters, Abigail confessed she often dreamed of the lamps at Matanicus Rock, wondering if the care of the lighthouse will follow my soul. This final sentiment made Elara pause, reflecting on all these women. An unwavering conviction seemed to bind them, a certainty that the light was a calling they must answer. They arrived at this challenging, isolated existence through varied paths, yet lived it with similar, steadfast dedication. Often, their sole reward was the quiet knowledge of duty fulfilled. With a sigh of satisfaction, Elara closed her notebooks. She felt prepared to share these narratives. Her gaze drifted sideways. Her mug stood empty. Simultaneously, a profound weariness washed over her. Like Abigail's 4-day tempest, the March winds continued their assault on the small kitchen window. Mother Nature seemed to be whispering that it was time for bed's refuge. Setting aside papers and books, Elara stood and stretched. She carried the empty cup to the kitchen, placing it gently in the sink. After tidying her satchel for the morning, she extinguished the fireplace flames, leaving the sitting room cloaked in darkness. Her soft bed awaited, nestled in the corner, piled high with its fluffy comforter. Elara sat on the edge, pulled off her socks, and slid her feet deep beneath the covers, toes reaching for the tucked-in sheet below. Pulling the duvet up to her chin, she rolled onto her side and switched off the bedside lamp. The amber glow vanished. She lay enveloped in darkness, listening to the steady, rhythmic patter of early March rain upon the roof. Yawning, she burrowed deeper into her pillows. The cadence of the storm lulled her as her eyes closed, her mind drifting. She pictured herself high in a tower on some remote island, expertly trimming a wick, lighting the lamp, Far from lonely, she felt secure, cocooned by the ocean's surge and the storm's symphony. She understood herself as a point of certainty, a creator of light in the vast darkness. She knew she was the resolute presence that would endure through the coming night. Time unwinds to the nascent years of the 2nd century, finding the Emperor Valerius, sovereign of Rome, ensconced within his Tiburtine sanctuary. Midway through his dominion, he sought solace here, in this sprawling estate hewn from the picturesque hills, a mere 20 miles yet an eternity away from the capital's clamor. Late spring draped the afternoon in warmth and sunlight as Valerius ambled through the villa's cultivated heart. A man of stature, years etched lightly upon a face framed by dark curls and a meticulously kept beard. He wore the simplicity of leisure, light fabrics, well-worn sandals, shedding the imperial mantle. No grand toga constricted him today, no audiences awaited. This was respite, earned after a tempestuous week wrestling with Rome's demands, chief among them, the monumental rebirth of the Pantheon, a task for his hand-picked architects. While the craft of building resonated within him, the city's relentless pulse soon frayed his spirit. Thus, Tibur beckoned. A swift ride of mere hours often stretched from a weekend's escape into weeks of cherished seclusion. The cadence of rural tranquility began to reclaim him. Arriving with the morning sun, fortified by a midday meal, Valerius commenced his customary circuit. Now, traversing an exquisite garden poised at the estate's edge, his devoted obsidian shadow, Vesta, padded faithfully behind. Here lay a favored nexus where human artistry embraced nature's grace. Marble sentinels and murmuring fountains flanked the paths. Fragrant wisteria spilled violet cascades over unseen brickwork. Afar, a long pool shimmered, a blade of captured sunlight. Silence reigned, save for the soft tread of emperor and hound, the liquid sigh of water. Valerius paused, attention sharpening. Birdsong threaded the quiet, the nearby chatter of sparrows bathing at the fountain's lip, and, more remote, unseen choristers weaving melodies from the deep green secrecy of cypress and pine. A profound sigh escaped Valerius, a breath laden with release. Gratitude washed over him. To be here again, where the knots of governance loosened, the weight of Rome dissolved. He felt rejuvenated, unburdened. The city's frantic energy he could endure, but only briefly. Compared to that relentless vortex, Tibur unfolded as an idyll, serene, its air a cool balm. Inhaling deeply, a smile touched his lips. What fortune, this heaven, this self-wrought refuge, for the villa was his vision made manifest. Dissatisfied with existing estates near the capital, he had conceived something grander, more intrinsically his. An ideal city distilled, he'd instructed his builders. And vast it was. Over 30 structures scattered amid sprawling gardens, eclipsing Pompeii itself in sheer expanse. Countless pools reflected the sky, fountains whispered secrets, thermal baths promised warmth. Libraries stood beside temples, grand pavilions punctuated open courts. An island villa offered ultimate privacy. Opulence was the decree. Cost, no object. Floors gleamed with exotic marbles, intricate geometries of glass and ivory. Walls were polished stone or vibrant frescoes, alive with mosaics depicting avian life, mythic beasts, and legends whispered through time. While echoing the expected grandeur of imperial dwellings, his Palatine residence in Rome offered no less luxury. This Tiburtine creation held a singular distinction. Valerius's soul was embedded in its very stones. He hadn't merely commissioned, he had conceived, directed, selected. His intent transcended mere opulence. He sought a landscape reflecting his journey, his passions. Years he had spent traversing the vast empire, from Britannia's mists to the sun-scorched sand of Africa, through the storied lands of Greece and the East. Duty propelled these voyages, yet an insatiable wanderlust fueled them. Memories, vivid and cherished, clung to him, emerald fields giving way to ochre deserts. Consequently, the villa became a tapestry of influences. Its elegant bones were classically Roman, yet specific enclaves whispered tales of distant shores, architectural echoes of his far-flung explorations. He now approached a precinct where these disparate threads converged. A path unfurled towards an elongated, man-made pool, embraced by stone colonnades and graceful arches. Along its length stood majestic marble figures, Roman deities conversing silently with Greek caryatids, those sculpted maidens whose flowing robes bore the weight of the entablature above. A smile of profound satisfaction touched Valerius's lips. This vista, this harmonious confluence of Hellenic, Roman, and Egyptian aesthetics resonated with his precise intention. The pool itself, a liquid homage to a Nile tributary, culminated in a distant, shell-shaped grotto, part folly, part shrine to Serapis, the Egyptian lord of depths. Within, carved from marble, the god reclined upon an ornate plinth amidst fountains, his gaze serene upon the tranquil, sea-green mirror before him. On balmy evenings, this space transformed, hosting lavish banquets where guests lauded its dreamlike perfection, its flawless symmetry. Yet for Valerius, its allure deepened, interwoven with symbolism, resonant with memory. It conjured the essence of places visited across North Africa and Greece, Athens, its architectural brilliance, its vibrant rituals, explored years ago. And inextricably linked to those recollections was Lysander, his cherished companion. Their meeting in eastern Bithynia had sparked an inseparable bond, their shared journeys painting the empire's canvas. Here, by this water, time dissolved, transporting Valerius to those luminous days abroad, Lysander ever at his side. Happy phantoms flickered at the edge of his vision. Reaching the grotto's threshold, Valerius stood motionless, captivated by the water's shimmering play of light and reflection. The tide of memory receded, leaving not emptiness but a quiet harbor of present satisfaction. Those adventures were jewels of his past, yet this interlude offered its own tranquil richness. He felt centered, calmer than he had been in years. Lifting his gaze, he absorbed the panorama, the pool's long sweep, the rhythmic procession of columns and statuary under elegant arches. A vision meticulously wrought, now breathing a magic surpassing the dream. Soon, the air would soften, inviting twilight feasts. He pictured tables circling the water, guests illuminated by the moon's silver, laughter mingling with the fountain's soft chorus. A future warmth beckoned, evenings shared with Lysander and intimate friends. Opening his eyes, he found Vesta seated nearby, patient sentinel. Time to proceed. The old hound, past her hunting prime, still craved the simple joy of movement, the exploration of the estate's myriad corners. As Valerius turned from the pool, Vesta bounded ahead, muzzle low. intently deciphering the olfactory tapestry of the path. He watched, a fond smile playing on his lips, amused by her absorption in the commonplace turf. Her pauses to investigate invisible dramas written in scent. A wry thought surfaced. Vesta, trotting ahead, remained gloriously indifferent to the curated splendor surrounding her. The masterworks of sculpture, the precious stone beneath her paws, none registered. Her world consisted of her master's presence and the earth's intriguing narratives. Any garden would suffice for her contentment. Herein lay part of Valerius's affection for her kind, their unwavering loyalty, their unreserved love, and their gentle insistence on the beauty of the mundane. The villa's artifice was magnificent, yes, but so too was this simple expanse of green. Valerius inhaled, drawing in the rich perfume of mown grass. Though his senses lacked Vesta's acuity, this aroma was deeply satisfying, redolent of spring yet whispering promises of the summer poised to unfold. These liminal moments held a unique beauty. Spring yielding to summer, summer sighing into autumn. A familiar, sweet nostalgia surfaced untethered to specific events, merely a pervasive sense of contentment laced with a subtle melancholy. Perhaps, he mused, it stemmed from an underlying awareness of time's quickening pace, accelerating with his own advancing years. It felt like only yesterday he'd marked this same seasonal shift, yet a full cycle had spun. Next year, doubtlessly, the same surprise would greet him. Virgil's line echoed, Fugit in reparabile tempus. Time, irretrievable, escapes. As a youth immersed in letters, the phrase had held little resonance. Days then stretched like infinite horizons. The poet, however, had perceived truth. Time had flown, especially since the mantle of emperor settled upon him near his 40th year. Was this acceleration perhaps a sign of a life lived fully, densely packed with experience, or simply a necessary reminder to decelerate, to consciously inhabit moments such as this? Purposefully, Valerius moderated his stride, attending now to the crunch of gravel underfoot, the sun's gentle pressure on his neck, the lingering scent of grass. Vesta glanced back, tail questioning the altered rhythm. Impatient, perhaps? With an affectionate touch to her head, Valerius quickened his steps slightly, guiding their path toward the estate's residential heart. They skirted the imposing structure of the thermal baths, traversed intimate gardens and sun-dappled courtyards. Finally, they stood before a colonnaded portico, the threshold to his most private domain, the Teatro Marittimo, his island retreat. Here stood a substantial dwelling, a villa unto itself boasting over 30 chambers, sleeping quarters, a library, a study, its own modest bath complex. This opulent structure claimed the entirety of a man-made isle encircled by a placid moat. A retractable wooden bridge provided the sole access. Though seldom raised, the potential for complete isolation appealed deeply to Valerius. The power to withdraw, to study, rest, or simply be, utterly undisturbed. The concept resonated with a boyhood yearning. How often, chafing against sibling squabbles or tedious lessons, had he wished for just such an escape? He'd pictured a rugged outcrop lapped by azure waves, a personal kingdom accessible only by his decree, sometimes admitting cherished guests, often no one at all. A sanctuary for solitary pursuits and untroubled thought. The reality differed. Polished marble gleamed where imagined rock had stood. Yet, gazing upon the splendid edifice, Valerius felt a profound resonance, a quiet joy. His younger self could never have conceived of creating such an island. Stepping onto the wooden span, Vesta close behind, his gaze dropped to the moat below. A flicker of silver, a fish darting through the aqueous green. This channel, like numerous pools dotting the grounds, teemed with life, their silent movements a balm to his spirit. Perhaps a new notion sparked. An indoor basin? An aquarium filled with the empire's most dazzling aquatic jewels. Space might be found, even within a bedchamber, a matter for his architects, soon. Ever the visionary, Valerius always held nascent projects simmering just below the surface of his thoughts. Beyond the bridge, the villa's entrance hall received them. An intricate marble frieze, alive with sculpted ships and marine wonders, adorned the walls above complex mosaic carpets. Their footfalls, his firm tread, and Vesta's soft padding were the only sounds breaking the profound stillness. Elsewhere on the estate, life bustled. Servants hurried, guests lingered, but here, entry was by imperial invitation only. Valerius, whose duties immersed him constantly in the company of others, cherished this silence, this absolute privacy. The quiet presence of his dog was conversation enough. Vesta, seeming to anticipate his desire, padded purposefully towards the study. He followed her into the large, light-filled chamber overlooking the moat. This was his sanctum for pursuits untethered to the imperial office. Reading, composing verse, delving into philosophy, sketching architectural visions, or at times simply gazing through the wide windows, adrift in memory or contemplation. He entered meaning to apply himself, perhaps to draft ideas for the fish basin, but found himself instead drawn to the couch near the window. Sinking into its cushions, his mind drifted, inevitably charting familiar courses back to past journeys. The tour of southern Hellas with Lysander, overseeing the meticulous restoration of ancient shrines. Closing his eyes, the scenes materialized with startling clarity. A yearning arose to revisit those shores, perhaps, or venture further still towards the empire's remotest frontiers. This wanderlust, a lifelong current within him, still pulsed. Yet age had brought perspective, the ability to anchor himself in the now. Future expeditions held their allure, but patience had tempered the urgency. For this moment, contentment resided right here. Opening his eyes, he saw Vesta already claimed her customary corner, curled upon a patch of soft, threadbare carpet. This ancient rug, perhaps the sole item in the villa showing its age, Valerius had deliberately kept, knowing the comfort it offered his old friend. Watching her gentle slumber, a corresponding drowsiness crept over him. The week's exertions, the garden's balm, the profound quiet, all conspired towards rest. With no pressing duties, why resist? Another simple indulgence granted by time, he mused with a faint smile. Adjusting the couch's cushions, Valerius lay back, closing his eyes once more. A slow inhalation, a conscious release. His body grew heavy, his mind quieted. The room was cool, hushed, save for Vesta's rhythmic snoring and the soft cadence of his own breath, deepening, slowing, easing him towards oblivion. Thoughts of marble halls and distant lands dissolved like mist. The Emperor Valerius drifted into that other sanctuary, inviolable and serene, the boundless territory of sleep.